Hello, everyone, and welcome to this thinking on Pornhub and how it gets away with it. I'm Alexi Mostrous. I'm an editor at Tortoise. Thank you very much for joining us on this stormy evening tonight. We had this idea for this thinking after something that one of our guests tonight told the Financial Times, which was that no politician wants to talk about the porn industry because then they have to acknowledge how it is a part of everyday life. And it got me thinking that Pornhub is a 14-year-old company now, yet only in the last 2 years really has it faced any serious scrutiny. So this company has an accountability problem. And then I found out that its leaders don't really give interviews. And it's got an opaque ownership structure. A lot of it's based in Luxembourg, and even that its spokespeople use fake names. And, you know, that's quite weird because you're talking about a company where 3 billion of us visit its main site, Pornhub. So Mindgeek is the main company and Pornhub is the main site. And 3 billion people visit Pornhub every month. And it's more popular than Amazon or Netflix. So you know, you contrast Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey appearing in front of Congress dozens of times with these random faceless executives at Mindgeek who really haven't given any interviews at all. And that suggests that there is an accountability problem even before you start reading about the accusations that have been leveled at Pornhub. Oh, sorry, I think behind me, my office, the pipes are, there's some water going through them. So anyway, let's push on. If anything, people know about Pornhub because it sponsors like breast cancer awareness campaigns, and it has like cheeky PR-driven campaigns offering premium services to lockdown to people in lockdown. But in the last 2 years, pressure has ramped up because of people like the guests that we have tonight. So tonight's event is about asking why that's happened, why for so many years Pornhub was allowed to effectively operate with impunity. What happens now, and how valid is the criticism that has been leveled against these sites? So we got 3 great guests to talk to us about that. Kate Isaacs is the founder of Not Your Porn, a campaigning website that has elicited real change. Honza Cervenka, a brilliant solicitor representing revenge porn victims in the UK and the US. And Lindsay G, a journalist and porn critic who's been writing about the industry since 2007. So just before we turn to them, thinking rules apply, normal thinking rules apply. We really want to hear from as many of you as well as our panelists. The idea is that we hear from your points of view and that at the end of the hour, we come to a more complex understanding of a difficult subject. So if you have views, opinions, thoughts, please write them in the chat. My colleague Phoebe is hosting the chat, or put your blue hand up and I'll bring you into the conversation. And we've got one kind of loosely enforced rule, which is no questions. We want to hear what you think about this subject. Okay, so Lindsay, can we come to you first? You started writing about the porn industry in 2007, which coincidentally, but rather brilliantly for our purposes, was when Pornhub, I think, was registered as a website. So you've been there kind of from the ground up. So can you give us a sense of how Pornhub and the other porn tube sites, the free tube sites, how they operate, how they make money, how they started, and what their effect was on the traditional porn industry?
Sure. Well, as you said, Pornhub really got its start in about 2007, which, like you said, is right around the time that I sort of stumbled into reporting on the porn industry as, you know, a subject of serious inquiry. And at that time, the adult entertainment industry, especially here in America, where I'm from, was entering kind of a free fall because they were really starting to feel the effects of the internet on the business. And a lot of people were making a lot of money on making porn and then distributing it online. But when Pornhub and other tube sites really came onto the scene, that disrupted all of the sort of existing infrastructure for making and distributing porn online. Because, as a tube site, the way that these sites work is they allowed any users, to upload material to the site. And Pornhub in particular also allowed people to download material from the website. So the effect that this ended up having was that even porn companies who were making, ethically made, consensually made, for-profit material that was in no way supposed to be getting out to the wrong people, they lost control of their product because people who bought the DVDs or, paid for a membership on their website could download the material and then re-upload it onto the Pornhub site. And then anyone who watched it could download it and re-upload it. So it became a major problem as far as copyright infringement went. There's rampant piracy. And the porn industry freaked out. I remember a lot of people saying things like, this is the end of porn, the industry is over, we're ruined. And what ended up happening is a lot of companies did lose a lot of money. And then Mindgeek, Pornhub's parent company, went in and bought up a lot of those companies. So they really, over the years, became very much the only game in town for a lot of people who were trying to make porn. And that goes for the performers and the producers, because Pornhub became really the only, well, not the only, but the biggest means of production and of distribution. So there was a lot of outcry from within the porn industry. People who were making porn did not want to see this happen, obviously. They didn't want to see their, rates for performances going down because Pornhub was driving prices down. They didn't want to see their content that they didn't want on Pornhub getting put up there illegally. But the sad truth of the matter is that when sex workers and porn stars and pornographers try to raise an outcry, nobody's really listening. And I saw that happen for years and years. And over time, as Pornhub and Mindgeek both grew and took over larger and larger shares of the existing industry, really what ended up happening is a lot of people who are in the making profit for good reasons because they want to sell their products market basically had to start working with Pornhub in some way or another, or they would go under. So even folks who had spoken out and still speak out against their business practices and against the fact that, copyright infringement is happening, non-consensual content is going up, no one in the porn industry wants to see abuse of any kind going on and being called porn. Because if you're trying to make porn for a living, you want to do it above board, you want to be following all of the rules, you want to be making money legally. The vast majority of people I know in the porn industry feel that way. They don't want to be conflated with, abusive material that's hurting people and breaking laws. But unfortunately, in order to make money in the current porn ecosystem, models often end up working for production companies that are under the Mindgeek umbrella, which then obviously goes up on Pornhub. Production companies end up having to, put up at least teasers of their material, sometimes premium content behind the paywall on Pornhub, because the company is so big, their name recognition is so big, and it reaches so many people that basically if you're not working with Pornhub at this point and you're making porn, people aren't going to know about your content. It's going to be very, very hard to get your name out there. So it's really sort of come full circle in a very similar way to, I'd say, Amazon, in that it controls so much of the production, it controls so much of the distribution. If you're not working with this company, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. And so on the one hand, I think a lot of people in the porn industry are very happy to see Pornhub being called to account for the abuses that it has been taking part in for years. But on the other hand, a lot of people's incomes, legally, consensually, ethically made incomes are being really impacted by the negative turn of events for Pornhub. So it's very complicated, and the history goes pretty deep for people in the porn industry.
So if Mindgeek got itself into a position where it effectively controlled the porn ecosystem, and if I'm hearing what you're saying right, that shut out a good deal of the ethical porn companies, given a choice either to go out of business or to work with Pornhub. Just explain to us, it might seem like a dumb question, but how does Pornhub and Mindgeek make money? Because everything on there, apart from the premium content, if you want to sign up to that, but the majority of content on Pornhub is free. So just talk us through how it makes its money.
Oh, ad sales, mostly ad sales. Anyone who's been to Pornhub website, I would think probably most of us here have, will see, there's ads. There's ads on the side, there's ads underneath, there's ads all over the place. Of course, there's also revenue sharing models with the models and performers who upload their content and take proceeds from what they make on Pornhub. Pornhub obviously takes some of that money, and the same for production companies who use it as a distribution platform, but it's primarily advertising.
You spoke quite eloquently about the effect of Pornhub and Mindgeek on other porn producers, especially in the early stages, maybe 2007 to 2015. But in those first kind of 5-6 years, was anyone in the industry saying, hold on, this is not only affecting industry people, by allowing anyone to upload content to these sites, there's a safety issue here as well? Was anyone saying that?
Huh, that's a good question. I have to think back to those days, those long gone days. I don't really recall there being much of an outcry at that point. I think particularly though, because like I said, the porn industry was so concerned about its own welfare. I'm certain that there were people who were concerned about any abusive content that they saw, but that wasn't the main problem that I was seeing with people who were, losing money at the time.
Okay, thank you. Kate Isaacs, can I come to you now? It strikes me as kind of incredible that you started your campaign group, Not Your Porn, 2 years ago, and since then there has been significant change in Pornhub and Mindgeek's operation, partly as a result, or mainly as a result of your advocacy. But that still leaves 10 years, as far as I can work out, when Pornhub was operating without people like you around. So I wonder whether you have an opinion or an analysis of why Pornhub was able to spend 10 years doing what it did before someone like you came along.
Absolutely. I think it was definitely one of these things where it was British culture that maybe got into the way in this country, in the sense that we're all maybe a little bit too prudish to have the conversation. But I started the campaign after a friend of mine had her iCloud account hacked, and videos of her having sex with an ex-partner were taken and uploaded to Pornhub. And it was just completely, it was so shocking to me, the fact that that could actually just happen to a normal person, in quotations. You hear about celebrity leaks, celebrity sex tapes, things like that. And I'd heard of Pornhub, obviously everyone's heard of Pornhub, but I didn't really know much about it. And I think the first reaction that I had when we were trying to get this video down from the website and it kept trending was, well, this is illegal, right? This is revenge porn. They can't just take content of other people and put that up and make money from it. That doesn't make any sense. But after digging into it for a few months after, I realized that actually it was a problem much bigger than my friend. And I've had hundreds of women across the UK and the US and Canada and across the world now who have come forward and said that they had the same issue. I think one of the biggest reasons why we haven't had this conversation before, and I think I remember that feeling of feeling completely shocked when this had happened to my friend, and I was in disbelief that no one had had this conversation before. But I think on the one hand, I think it's a massive culture issue. I think a lot of us don't want to acknowledge the porn industry as an actual industry. I think if we do that, people are afraid what it could do to our culture, even though, like you said, so many people visit Pornhub every day. It's more popular than Netflix. So to completely ignore this entire very legal industry, I think it's essentially burying our heads in the sand and not wanting to acknowledge that the sex industry actually, exists as an actual industry. And then I think on the other hand, it was happening to victims who were feeling so ashamed of being on these websites, whether they were a revenge porn victim, an abuse victim, or a child, that they weren't having these conversations either. And that's completely understandable, right? Because if you have been put on a porn website without your permission, the last thing you want to do is then continue talking about that video being up on that website. And so that embarrassment and that shame kind of drove it underground. So you had this massive multi-billion-dollar industry operating and profiting from all of this type of abuse, met with the fact that they own, as speculated, around 80% of the commercialized porn industry globally. So mass amounts of power, very little knowledge about Mindgeek as an actual organization and who works for it and who they are. And, they're registered in Luxembourg, but we know they operate mostly in Montreal, and those fake names, etc. And then on top of that, a culture that just doesn't want to acknowledge porn in the first place. And I think in some ways the campaign has helped those conversations carry on, and I'm super proud of that and proud of the other women that I work with, that we've started that conversation. But as Lindsay has already said, it kind of has thrown a lot of things up in the air in the way of sex workers who have to work with Pornhub and now not being able to sort of make a living in that respect. And just kind of opening up these conversations for abuse victims is also really, really complicated and difficult to sort of unpack. So it's complicated is the answer. And I think that the reason why Mindgeek has grown the way it has and Pornhub has continued to operate the way it does in such a terrible and unethical way is because we don't talk about it. And I honestly believe that's what gives it its power. Because if you think of any other company or any other industry, 80% of a monopoly is something that would be contested. But because we don't have these conversations about porn, we've allowed it to continue and just operate under its own sort of self-regulation, which we know from experience doesn't really involve anything.
And I suppose that if you're talking about kind of structural issues, it's not only Mindgeek's monopoly position that is a problem. It is the fact that, and I wonder whether you agree with this, Kate, that the economics behind its business is tied inexorably to attracting as many people as possible as it can to its site. And that provides quite a strong economic incentive not to put many controls in place to limit the amount of content that's coming onto the site.
Totally. That's exactly their business model. It's to get as much content on that website as humanly possible in a very short amount of time to attract the more viewers as possible. And I think that obviously, as Lindsay was saying, it's really interesting backstory of Mindgeek. I remember I listened to John Ronson's Butterfly Effect when I started researching them, and they said that it was born out of some guys online who were basically on a Reddit type platform who were just sharing their usernames and passwords to all these new online sites and sharing memberships. And that's how the idea was born. And it was born out of piracy. It was born out of stealing content. The entire business model from the very, very start was born out of trying to make as much money as possible by stealing as much content as possible. So to then sit back and think now, because it's a massive company, that it will operate and self-regulate and moderate correctly, is of course they won't, because that costs money. I think I actually had a phone call with Mindgeek in 2019, and it was unbelievable. I think it was the last time they actually ever spoke to anyone, including the press, for a long time, because I recorded the phone call. Oops. That's why we're protected in Britain with these laws under investigation. But they said to me on the phone that they had a few dozen moderators across the entire company. And if you think about the amount of content that gets uploaded every day, to have that few moderators, that's not going to even scratch the surface. It's not even going to come close. So, and moderators cost money. And even the moderators that they're, unethically hiring in some Greek island underground to go through millions of videos one by one aren't going to be able to pick up on stolen content, copyright infringement, revenge porn, child pornography. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, I remember reading in preparation for this some testimony given by Ferris Antoon, the CEO of Mindgeek, to the Canadian Ethics Committee in February, and he said that every video that was uploaded to Pornhub was viewed by a human moderator, and I just thought, how logically, how could that be true? And even if it was true, it doesn't suggest that they were looked at very carefully. Hamza, can I come to you, but can I just put a mark in to say that it would be great to speak to some people in the chat who are making some really good points. Nacho Moraes, please, maybe Andrew Girdwood, and Rosalind Quinn has put her hand up. So can we come to Hamza and then them, and then we're going to go to Phoebe, my colleague, for some slides. Hamza, let's talk about how Mindgeek works on a kind of precise level. So are there two problems that you have seen representing revenge porn victims? That anyone until recently could upload content to Pornhub. You didn't have to, as far as I understand it, show that you were over 18 or that the people in your video were consenting. You basically only had to have a valid email address. But there's also the problem of what happens after the video is posted, which, as I understand it, is that Pornhub, in some cases, delayed or made it difficult for the video in question to be taken down. So can you talk from your perspective about those two issues, or any difficulties that you've faced in terms of removing content?
Sure, happy to. And you put your finger right on it. A big problem with Pornhub and the other tube sites was, and in some cases still is, the fact that anybody can upload a video of anything. They try to hide behind the fact that their terms and conditions say that you certify that you've got the consent of everybody appearing in the video, and yes. But of course, it's just a tick box that people check almost instinctively. It's almost like a tick. You're on a website. Of course, I need to tick the terms and conditions. It's not actually a deterrent, a validation process of any sort. And so, as Kate put it so eloquently, Pornhub's business is based on having as much content as possible, as much desirable content as possible. The more people come, the more people click on ads, and the $0.001 that somebody might earn per click adds up once you scale it up to this huge, gigantic proportion that Mindgeek has been allowed to reach. For the case of victims who end up falling to the crime of revenge pornography, it's so much harder to get a video removed than to upload it. And the onus is always on the victim. You have to be there with, almost computer-like mind and eyes to sort of laser pinpoint exactly where your videos are. If the videos were chopped up, re-uploaded in different sites, turned black and white, all of these things that can be done to manipulate a video, to clone it, to just create more and more of the same video, the onus is on the victim to do all of that legwork and say, oh, actually, I'm so sorry, there's this link too, and that too. Oh, hold on, 2 seconds ago, another link. And you just end up sending files and files of paperwork or emails. And we saw in the Canadian inquiry that the owners of the CEO and other people at Mindgeek were asking very targeted questions about publicly known cases where people send them takedown notices. Oh, can't find them, don't know where they are, I'd have to check the files. Oh, I don't know. It's only been all over the press. You should have really known whether you received them or not. And the fact is that they probably did receive them, didn't take them down or drag their feet. Now, the problem with revenge pornography, or image-based sexual abuse, as I prefer to call it, is that Pornhub is really just one little slice of the harm that occurs to victims of revenge pornography online. There are many other websites that have even more ambiguous, anonymous, run out of Mars corporations that are impossible to track, and who definitely ignore takedown notices because they kind of can. the law of the internet, such as it may be, provides a great degree of anonymity. We don't really get to know the IP addresses of who uploaded the video, where and when. We don't get information from our internet service providers to allow us to sort of figure out, okay, let me piece this together. Who is the person that uploaded it? Can I do some detective homework myself and find out? It is extremely hard to do that. You know, and once you take that with the usual company law, where companies can create massive structures that need extensive spreadsheets to keep track of, to get to the actual human being who's making decisions or who is responsible for whatever happened on Pornhub or any other website. Look how long it's taken us to actually get somebody from Mindgeek in front of a legislative body, answer questions on oath. Part of it certainly is the unwillingness or the hesitation, I think, on government's part to talk about porn, confront it, recognize that this is a multi-million, if not billion industry, one of the most visited websites in the world. But part of it is also because they have hit their tracks very well and don't publish much about themselves, have much less transparency than some of the other internet giants that legislative bodies have been grappling with. And so you end up having a regime that allows for anybody to upload anything. Chances are it's going to stay. Chances are somebody's going to download it and put it somewhere else. You know, if I wanted to be a perpetrator of revenge pornography, you know, you click, you upload it once, you sleep on it. Chances are it has spread overnight without you doing anything about it. And so it's the scale of the problem that makes it so difficult to solve. The governments around the world have created such an environment at the turn of the millennium that gave websites huge protections from lawsuits, gave them huge latitude to develop themselves free of much restriction, really, to a point where any other industry would probably say, oh, thank you, I would like that very much. I would also like to have these immunities to build my you know, to build my car making company, to build my newspaper, to start a law firm. And, you know, it's taken 2 decades for people to really be talking about it, start asking questions. Is it time for reform? Do we need to rethink this? Do we need to regulate more? But in those 20 years, these websites have reached such a scale that now they say, oh, we can't possibly do everything. We can't, you know, we do all that we can moderation wise, but you know, there are so many videos, there's only so much we can do. The problem is that the governments allowed them to have this many videos, to have this many visitors, and, you know, not do any homework until now. And now, of course, it's perhaps a bit too late to effectively make them do it.
Well, Jose, let's come back in a bit to talk about potential solutions to that, if indeed there are any. But what you said about the excuses that the Mindgeek CEOs were making reminds me very much of what Mark Zuckerberg and other leaders of social media platforms tell Congress, that they're doing everything they can, but that some bad stuff will slip through. So let's talk to Thomas Fabry about that, because I think he's making almost exactly the same point, that there's not that much difference between the position of something like Mindgeek and the position of something like Facebook or YouTube. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not suggesting the problem is exactly the same, but I think the bigger issue is moderation, and that affects all sites that are they're hosting user-generated content, so where users can just upload what they want. And we know that Facebook and Messenger and Reddit and all sorts of mainstream sites have huge problems with illegal content, including sexual illegal content. So having followed the industry for a long time, even before tube sites were a thing, I remember downloading music on Napster, and you'd find illegal short porn videos there, and now there's illegal images and stolen images shared on WhatsApp, and et cetera, et cetera. So my point is, are we sure that trying to put more censorship on porn sites, which some should be moderated better and ran better. It's not difficult in the case of Mindgeek, but my counterpoint would be that are we sure that kind of limiting access to revenues or putting more censorship solution would actually solve the problems or create even more issues somewhere else?
Well, perhaps we could turn to some of our guests to try and answer that. But Thomas, what do you think about the fact that the leaders of the major social networks that you're talking about that also have a moderation problem have been asked about this quite explicitly on a number of occasions over the last 5, 6, 7 years? They've appeared before Congress, they've appeared before MPs in the British Parliament. It's been a real issue for someone like YouTube for a long time, and yet with Mindgeek, not only does it not seem to have received the same sort of scrutiny, and I wonder what you think of this. Do you think that actually, moderation is more important for a pornographic website because of the sort of material that you're uploading and that you're seeing than it is on a site like Facebook? So kind of two questions back at you.
Well, of course, it is very important, absolutely, and I think anyone I have known and I know in the porn industry, I've never spoken with anyone in Mindgeek or in any other tube sites, but anyone in the industry is completely against seeing illegal content or legal content or stolen content being disseminated. So everyone is hoping for better moderation, but not blocks and censorship. And I don't want to get too technical, but I think the main issue that puts all this social media and porn sites together is the so-called Section 230. It's highly debated. So basically, the point is that should platforms be considered liable for what's hosted on the platforms? At the moment, they aren't, and so there are, from both sides of the political spectrum, at least in America, but also in Western Europe, there's arguments from both the right and the left against this system, and we might well see that's going to change in the future, and that's going to affect porn, but also social media. And so.
Thank you very much. We're going to come back to the chat in a second. Perhaps we could come to is it Rosamund who raised her? There was someone who raised her hand. Let's come to her after Phoebe runs through some slides, because occasionally you can get lost in the detail, and Phoebe's going to run through 5 slides quickly that's going to show us exactly what's happening to Pornhub and Mindgeek. Hey, Phoebe.
Hi. Yeah, so we're going to do this really quickly because I think we've covered some of it. So just initially, so this is kind of the key lawsuits running at the moment, and they're worth looking into more. But there's 2 women who brought a case in February through the National Center on Sexual Exploitation Law in the US, stating child sexual abuse material was distributed by Pornhub. There's 40 plaintiffs who are suing for 1 million each. This is kind of the big one that you might have seen in the news, and that's under the Girls Do Porn group, which posted videos of these women when they were children, and it was accused of child trafficking. And then there's one Canadian woman specifically putting forward a $600 million class action suit, footage of her being sexually assaulted as about a 12-year-old being shared on the platform and staying on the platform. So each of these cases has their own nuances and differences, but across the board, the idea is that it's young children being put on these platforms either through sex trafficking or without consent. And if we go to the next slide. So who are Mindgeek? We have again touched on this a little bit. So they are based in Luxembourg, and that's for tax reasons. They're a private company run out of Montreal, and they're led by Farah Santoon and David Tessio, who are both Canadian. They have about 100 million visitors to Mindgeek's porn sites every day, and this is from their website. These are their stats. About 15 terabytes worth of videos get uploaded daily. That's more than that's a lot more than Netflix, let's just say that. 3 billion ad impressions, which is clearly where they're making their money, to millions of users who go on their sites daily, and they've kind of posted about $460 million in yearly revenue as well. And if we go to the next slide. And so this is a study that was just released by the University of Durham. So they took a 6-month period in 2017, 2018, and they did a study of the landing pages. So this isn't through search terms, this is literally the landing pages of 3 sites in the UK, including Pornhub. And they found, just to kind of give you perspective, they found the word teen in the title more often than any other description of sexual acts or body parts. 12% of the titles described activities that constitute sexual violence, and 8.5% of those titles that describe sexual violence also included the word teen. Now, clearly not all of these videos may have had underage people in them, but this is what was being presented to customers as they came onto the site. This is not, you know, you searching for something, this is what's being presented to you, and it does kind of show a kind of a picture of porn. And this is an analysis of over 150,000 titles, so it's quite a comprehensive look at what's being presented on these sites. And then we go to the next slide. So what are they saying about it? So this is Pornhub's response to the New York Times article in December by Nicholas Kristof, the children of Pornhub, that kind of set in motion quite a few changes to the company. They removed 80% of its videos, about 10 million videos, and now only have videos from verified content, and MasterCard and Visas dropped the platform entirely too. And it's also important, they say that they have a combination of human reviews and technologies, but there's been question about the technology, whether it can effectively fingerprint videos. Small edits to a video can change the way that it's picked up by the software. And also from human review, as we've kind of said, that they don't really have enough moderators. One of the lawsuits at the top said that there's about 800 to 900 pornographic videos for an 8-hour shift, or about 100 videos per hour for 10 individuals on the moderation team, which is a huge amount of content to efficiently go through, and just thinking this is an impossible task. And then the final slide. So they released a transparency report in 2020. This is the first time they have released this. They said that they'd removed 653 million pieces of content, 53,000, apologies. And it's important to say that that does not include the 10 million videos that they then took down. There is no way of knowing if that was from those videos or not. And they said that they it's breaking the terms of service to have any content that has underage content or exploitation or real and simulated. That's kind of unsure. It could be things like deepfake, which does occur, but just from a search that I did today, just to kind of give a perspective, there's 200,000 videos tagged with teen on Pornhub and 19,000 tagged with schoolgirl. Clearly, again, this content may not have underage women in it, but that content is out there, it is available, and these videos were also available on the front page of Pornhub. So it's really hard to see when, you know, talking the talk and actually walking the walk on the moderation side too. So that kind of gives like a little bit of perspective on where Pornhub is now.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Well, while you were doing that, I was having a glance at the chat, and some people are making some really interesting points from both sides of the spectrum. Jeff is saying real regulation is needed, but then you got Nacho saying that is porn going to be the next target of woke-driven Puritanism? Phoebe mentioned a Nick Kristof article that appeared in December 2020, and for me, that seemed to be quite a big turning point. Lindsay, can we come to you and ask you what happened within the porn industry when that article dropped? There was definitely pressure ramping up on Mindgeek and Pornhub on the other tube sites before. There was a big petition, as I understand it, from Exodus Cry, and then there were obviously campaigns being run to great effect by Kate. But the Nick Kristof article seems significant.
Oh, yeah, it was very significant. Because like I said, there have been people in the porn industry trying to agitate against Pornhub's lax moderation for years. So on the one hand, there was a small amount of celebration when the New York Times article came out, because, you know, people have been saying this for a while. Yes, we want more moderation going on the site, but there was a lot more fear going around, because in that article, Nicholas Kristof specifically called for credit card companies to stop doing business with Pornhub. And that is what ended up happening very quickly. First Visa and MasterCard said that they were, and then Discover said that they were going to do investigations into the site. And then those investigations quickly turned up material that they didn't like, and they shut down payments on the site. And that has had a horrible effect on the bottom lines of a lot of people who make ethically and consensually produced pornography, as I said before. And the really scary part, well, there are maybe two very scary parts about that. One being that credit card companies are now taking a closer look at who they're doing business with online. American Express already doesn't work with adult content at all. PayPal doesn't work with adult content at all. And now basically Visa, MasterCard, and Discover are looking at putting into effect much more stringent rules about who they will work with. So people who are making ethical content online and trying to sell it are very worried that they're not going to be able to accept credit card payments at all in the future. So that effect is already starting to happen. I think MasterCard has said that they are going to impose much stricter rules, and that could then spread to Visa and Discover and anyone who does business with anybody online.
Aren't those rules only saying that anyone making porn needs to produce proof that anyone in the videos is consenting and is an adult?
It's my understanding that it is not specifically on the porn producers, but on the companies, the distribution platforms. So if you are paying for this content anywhere online, the platform that you're getting it from needs to show that they are taking steps to be sure that all of the boxes have been checked off. And that sounds like an easy enough thing to do, but the question is, will those platforms decide to do all of the checking that they need to do and make it easy for people who are uploading the content? Or are they just going to say, that's too complicated, it's too expensive, we're not doing it, and stop working with adult content producers? And really the scary thing about that, from where I'm sitting, is that while it's wonderful to put pressure on these platforms so that they are not releasing images of abuse to the world, and we want to see that happen, the people who end up bearing the brunt of all of this are the sex workers themselves, the people who are trying to make, ethically produced material that adults can pay for and enjoy in the privacy of their own homes. And when the people who are making that content get pushed out farther and farther and farther to the margins online and everywhere else, it gets a lot harder for people to find content that was made ethically, and that may end up pushing people toward finding more unethically produced content. So it's scary on a number of levels, both for people who are making porn and people who want to watch porn in an ethical way.
It seems very unfair that ethical porn producers should have been adversely affected by the arrival of Pornhub and Mindgeek, and now bear the brunt of attempts to crack down on it by Visa and MasterCard. It also seems very surprising that Visa and MasterCard should have provided services to Pornhub without investigating the site for, it seems like more than a decade. Lindsay, can I just ask you to respond to a point made by my colleague Liz Mosley in the chat, which is that if you're not paying for porn, you're not consuming it ethically. Do you think that there is a model whereby you can watch free porn ethically and sustainably?
Oh, that's a good question. I think hypothetically, there is. Were Pornhub and other tube sites to operate with much more moderation in place and with more, checks and balances, and if they were to hire just more moderators to actually look at more material, if they were to make more hoops that one needs to jump through in order to upload the material, which is, it does appear that Pornhub is working on making that happen. That was part of their sort of scrubbing of their site that happened after the Kristof article came out on the New York Times, they got rid of millions of videos, and they changed their moderation policies, which, interestingly enough, they did that within a few days of the article coming out. They did that before the credit card companies shut down payments on their systems, which means they could have done this at any time. They just didn't until a New York Times article came out and went viral. But yes, so supposing that you have a website, a tube site that operates with much stricter guidelines in place, it's hypothetically possible to have a tube site where you can watch content for free, and your ad impressions, your eyeballs looking at the right thing on the screen, get somebody paid somewhere. But the question mark is always still, even if you do put more hoops in place for people to jump through, and you make people check more boxes off before they upload or download anything, you still can't control what people are going to put on that platform, and there's only so much checking that you can do, and that's really the wild card.
Okay, thanks. But let's come to Honza now, and then maybe to Kate, and then back to the chat. Honza, Lindsay mentioned some of the steps that Pornhub and Mindgeek took after the Nick Kristof article came out, and after in the wake of pressure from pressure groups like Kate's. They removed literally millions of videos, as far as I can see. Anyone that was an unverified user couldn't now post, and they also banned users from searching for videos, I think, using controversial keywords. How far do the changes go, do you think, to fixing the problem?
I think, first of all, I just want to say, ever since the article came out, and the credit card companies took action, I always think, gosh, really? That's what it's going to take to bring about change? Credit card companies? Great, I'm grateful for it, but it just really shows you how unpredictable this industry is, and how really other entities are making the sort of decisions that we want our governments and regulators to make. That's the side point. But to answer your question, I think the focus has to be ultimately on consent. People who appear in videos and photographs that are put on the websites need to have affirmatively and explicitly consented to being on those websites. And that's not the case. It's probably...
It's still not the case.
There is I don't think anybody on Mindgeek's part could come forward and say categorically that they got the consent of everybody who appears in all of these videos to appear in them and for them to be distributed through Pornhub. I don't think they can say that. They can say that every video that was uploaded perhaps was uploaded with a tick that said that the uploader had consent, but not Pornhub. And I think that there are still, and certainly in the wider portfolio of Mindgeek's websites, where we get many more websites than just Pornhub and some of the really famous ones. I don't believe that to be the case. But until we shift the burden from intent and moderation and all of these things that that talk about everybody other than the people who didn't want to be there to begin with, we're not going to solve the problem. We need to find a way to make sure that all the videos appear there with people's consent. We have a side practice called consent lawyers, exactly with that in mind. And it's difficult. It might have to be done manually. It might be taxing, but this is a business model that does a lot of marketing. Pornhub is a very well-known brand, and it basically allows anybody to benefit from the brand and spread videos that they want to. Well, or at least used to now. Now it's obviously a bit more restricted. The equivalent. I don't like liking the internet to the offline world too much, but I do think, if you think of, say, the New York Times just letting everybody use their logo, it's just like, oh yeah, you've got something you want to share, here you go, that's the website, yeah, you can put our logo on top, that's not a problem, go ahead. It just wouldn't happen. And yet, with the laws as they are from 20 years ago, that's how we set up internet businesses to operate. That's the advantage that we gave them on the offline world. And that's the advantage that they're exploiting, and they're hurting thousands and tens of thousands of people, mostly women, not exclusively, in their wake, and that's a problem. We need to start talking about consent. We need to start talking about people who appear on the websites against their consent, hear from them and learn from them how that can be improved.
Thank you, Hansa. That was great. I want to come to Kate as we're wrapping up, and I'd like to ask her about how well she thinks Pornhub has fixed its own problem by, for example, taking the steps that have just been outlined. But I also want her to respond to a point being made in the chat by Michaela Hausler. Michaela, are you there? Because I think that you're raising a really good point, you know, about how much you should regulate or focus on content on these sites that might fall short of non-consensual and outright abusive, but it is still potentially content that is harmful. And it might be content that is also pushed to viewers by Pornhub's algorithms in order to make money. Yeah, can you just talk about the point that you made in the chat?
Yeah, sure. I think just the point that I was trying to make is that when these videos, even if everyone that appeared in the video was of legal age and therefore no law was actually broken in the making of the video, if those videos are then marketed as being schoolgirls or young teens, or the people in the videos are, you know, acting as if they were a teen or they're in cheerleader uniforms or something like that, and those videos are then essentially being marketed as child pornography, even if a child is not in the video, the person viewing the video doesn't necessarily know that. If someone is 18, they probably look quite similar to someone who's 16 or 15. So I just don't think it's such a clear line that can be drawn, that those videos are still being promoted to people that have, you know, that are seeking out child porn, and that Pornhub, as that study showed, are even kind of promoting these videos, not even to people just searching for them, but on the main kind of landing pages of their websites.
Kate, what do you think about? I mean, you've obviously focused very much on abusive and or illegal content being disseminated through these sites, and so I quite like your opinion about how much Pornhub's changes help that kind of particular issue. But also, what do you say to the wider point that maybe there's something that we should be looking at in terms of incentivizing harmful behavior through videos, even if the people in the videos are consenting adults?
Two very big questions. I'll do my best to try and to answer them in a condensed way. I think on the point that Michaela was making about sort of some of the potentially abusive videos which are dressed up as kinks, is what I think you were getting at, Michaela, with that, in terms of very consenting adults who are pretending to be teenagers or pretending, you know, and I think sexual kinks are very valid, and I think within pornography it's very valid. I do think, and this is my day job, I work in media research, I don't tend to look at porn, manage to separate that out, but we do look at media and we study and critique media and its representation of everyone essentially within that media. If you look at television or advertisements, we look at how we represent people of color. It's very important for us to make sure that we are continuing to critique it and make sure that we are not sort of promoting or pushing propaganda or you know, abusive behavior or stereotypes, for example. And that's something that we have in conversations every day. I think with pornography, it's even more important to do that in so many different ways. It's a very highly stimulating situation, and it's very much like, I always think of pornography. It's similar to things like alcohol or gambling. You know, in moderation, it could be really fun. It could be really good. It could be really, really healthy. And maybe you're not a person of moderation, but you know when to stop. But in the same way, like we look at alcohol and the effects on the brain, and we look at how alcohol is marketed and how it's marketed to children, et cetera, we're very critical of that. And there are systems in place to assure that, you know, obviously alcoholism does happen, but we're very aware of it, and the same with gambling. And I think with something so highly stimulating as pornography, when we know it's being accessed and watched by young children, but also people who are going through various mental health issues, I think the way that we push out those messages or push out those images is very, very important. And I think we need, and it's a huge question, because I think as a society, we really do need to look at why we really like hypersexualize Britney Spears and that Baby One More Time music video. Like, I think the fact that we've sexualized the school uniform is a bigger question for a much longer conversation for a different day. But it is important to critique that. And I think we're too afraid to critique sexual kinks. And I don't know why. I think it's important to do so. I think obviously it's a very difficult conversation to have, but I do think that it's something we need to be more aware of, and we need to be critiquing a lot more regularly. When it comes to Mindgeek, sorry, Alexi, I was going to say,
please.
When it comes to Mindgeek and the changes that they made, I'm not satisfied at all. Like I said, I had a conversation back with them a couple of years ago, and I read out several testimonies from different victims of revenge porn about the processes that they had to go through to get their content off of Pornhub and what happened as a result. And they ignored it, and they laughed a lot. Like, I've got this recording and it's terrible, but also thinking about the fact that they actually actively laughed at some of these testimonies, saying that they didn't believe several of them, saying that it could possibly, that couldn't possibly happen, etc., etc. And then in the same breath, a woman called Kate, my namesake, who worked there, said that, and I quote, we have videos stolen from our paid for sites. Mindgeek owns several paid for sites all the time and uploaded to Pornhub all the time. So in a way, we're victims too. And that quote will stay with me, I think, for the rest of my life, because it was in that moment that I very much realized that this is a company that does not care. Pornhub doesn't care. Pornhub cares about profit. They don't care about victims. So for us to be saying this and us to be pushing this on them for the last couple of years, reading out testimonies, it's very difficult to not get emotional about this, because I think it's quite an emotive topic. But I did a joint investigation with the Sunday Times. And in that investigation, we found footages of a child as young as 3 in those videos. And that's something I'm never going to be able to unsee, and something that I never should have seen. And they knew about that. And I put that to them, and it wasn't a priority. It only became a priority when MasterCard and Visa threatened to pull out and do their own investigations. It didn't matter how many times a victim came forward, crying, telling their story, talking about humiliation, talking about reliving abuse, talking about the sheer lack of consent, how it felt like rape, it felt like sexual exploitation, because they had done something without their consent and pushed it out to the entire world. That didn't scratch the surface for them. It was when the credit card companies decided that they were going to pull their support. And I don't think a company like that should be trusted to self-regulate. And if we're on the subject of verification, and obviously when they wiped all of those videos, it was a celebration, I think, for a lot of victims, because they weren't verified users, obviously. But I do think that we can't just like, okay, great, you've done it now, you've changed, we're going to just let you crack on. You've got this, go ahead with Model Hub. We can't do that. They regulated a 15-year-old trafficked girl in Florida who was found because she was on Pornhub. She was a verified model back in 2019. What verification system gives a 15-year-old missing child a blue tick? And I think that for us now to drop the conversation because they wiped 80% of their material is wrong. I think that, and we talk about Pornhub, and I think I've been attacked on a number of occasions of why do you focus on Pornhub? Why Pornhub? There's so many other porn companies out there, or so many other tube sites. But I think it really comes into question the fact that we've allowed a company like this to operate in the way it does. And if we do take down Pornhub, which might happen one day, and in some ways I do, I know it's very unfortunate for the models, but I think it's something that needs to be done at some point, and maybe we need to knock it down to build it back up again. But we also, if we take down Pornhub, we still have a problem. We still have a massive problem in this country, because another one will pop right back up and we will not regulate it. We will continue to let it and allow it and almost advocate for it to act in whatever way they choose. And I think that that's very dangerous. And I think I think the main message that I think, if I can get any message out during this thinking, is that the UK government needs to put its socks up and actually start addressing the porn issue in this country. And that's not about censorship. I know we've thrown around the word censorship so many times. This is about consent. I don't think anyone is against censoring child pornography or child abuse images. I think this is a conversation about stifling kinks even. This is a conversation about very real people who have very much been abused by this system that we've allowed to continue over the last decade or so. And the fact that the UK government has refused to acknowledge it in the sense that it refuses to regulate it, I think it has had a monumental impact. And I think we could talk about censorship and we could talk about the morality of porn until the cows come home, because it's such a huge topic. But any one of us sitting on this call right now, if you have ever, not even if you've ever recorded a sex tape, there are people who've been secretly recorded and uploaded to Pornhub on the regular, but any one of you on this call right now could be uploaded to Pornhub very, very easily within a very short space of time. And if that doesn't terrify you, then it should, because I think not having the control over that content and those images of yourself is terrifying. And I think it's disgusting that we've allowed it to continue for this long.
Okay, thank you so much. It normally falls to me as the editor to summarize the discussion in the last few minutes, but I think Kate's done a better job than I could. But I think that it's worth reflecting that a couple of people on the chat are making very strong, very logical points about there being the danger of a moral panic in terms of porn discussions, and that to a certain extent porn is about stereotypes. And we have to look at the debate within that framework. But I don't think that takes away from a big question that Mindgeek has to answer, which is that it seems to have operated in a very unaccountable way for years and years and years. It didn't have the controls that it needed to have in place, and harmful and abusive content, even illegal content, seems to have made its way onto its platform. And there is still a very, very serious question for government regulators and national governments around the world about why this site and others like it were allowed to operate in such a way year after year after year. And only now, thanks to people like Kate and to Nick Christoph and to Hansa, only now are they reforming their practices. It's a very, very interesting and open question about how a healthy porn industry works going forward. But the evidence suggests, at least to me, that the way that Mindgeek was operating is not it. So let's keep on going with the discussion. And I hope to see you very soon. And thank you very much to everyone, but especially to our guests, Hansa, Kate, and Lindsay, for joining us. Have a great evening.